Right, we're turning our attention to rugby because Ronan O'Gara is on standby on the line. Brian O'Driscoll was on Monday Night Rugby last night, and he reckons Johnny Sexton is on a run of bad form, the like of which he has never experienced at any point yet in his career. Did Joe Schmidt leave our halfbacks on too long?
Probably. It's a tricky one because both of them are not playing anywhere near the level that we're used to. Connors seems to be trying to play his way through an injury. I don't know. He's the only one that really knows how much it's bothering him. Johnny's definitely had a dip in form that I don't think he's encountered in his career previously. So it's trying to give them the confidence to be able to play through that, but then don't cut your nose off to spite your face. You know, you've got to be able to look at the bigger picture of it's not working for the team, therefore we need to bring in some fresh faces. I do think that if Joey Carberry was on the bench, he might have been introduced a little bit earlier than Jack Carty. You know, it's only his second cap. You know, he's a nice player, but he's not Joey Carberry. Conor Murray, again, you know, it's similar, even though Kieran Marmion's played well for Connacht in recent weeks and has never disappointed for Ireland, there's still a gulf between the two. So I think Joe's trying to give him game time to be able to get that confidence back, which just doesn't seem to be coming. So the only alternative now is that he gets a break from it like everybody else and goes back to his provincial team and hopefully he gets a bit of rest time or whatever's necessitated to allow himself to be close to 100% fit come World Cup time.
Ronan O'Gara, very good morning to you.
Hey Eoin, how are you?
Not too bad. So would you go along with that perhaps Johnny Sexton just needs a little bit of a break to sort of press the reset button and he'll come back to the way he used to be, or is this problem a bit more severe than Brian O'Driscoll thinks?
I'm not sitting on the fence, but I think time will tell, and the fact that obviously he's going to get a break now and you're away from Test rugby for a bit, so the likelihood is he's with the best team in Europe, so it'll be a great opportunity to regain composure and confidence, I think. And I know this is probably feeling pretty well. I think, halfbacks get overpraised most definitely when things are going well, and then when it rains, it really does pour. And the team didn't go well on Sunday, or Saturday, sorry, but the two halfbacks didn't go well. I most definitely agree with that, and it is very difficult in the fact that I think 2018 was so good and you had momentum. Now it's gone, so you've hit a wall, and I think the biggest challenge is going to be mentally. How do you get that back? And obviously, the other aspect of it is the fact that I suppose the two of them are in their 30s, and guys will be in denial about that, but there's no substitute for younger legs, and just you can have a few guys, I think, that are in the 30s, but I don't think you can have you can't be carrying too many of them. And I'm not suggesting that Ireland are carrying Conor or Johnny by any stretch of the imagination, but this campaign it didn't go well, and it didn't go well over I presume a 5-game period. So there are, I suppose, big question marks over everything really, and that's what happens when you play at this level of the sport. It's absolutely ruthless, and everyone kind of has to have a look at themselves and see how they get better, or else, as we found out, they've got beaten. So it's a challenging time on and off the pitch for everyone involved.
After a couple of performances like that, Ronan, does it get to a point where the question marks start to come over yourself? Like, is there a chance here that the likes of Johnny and Conor Murray are going to start to suffer a bit of a dip in confidence?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, confidence is key. I can remember it well in terms of when myself, Paul, Brian were playing, people would ask, what do you need a coach? You need a coach to get your direction. He dictates your mood, how you get out of bed every day, and he sets the tempo for your day when you go down for that first meeting. And that's not washing your hands of it. I think a lot of players, especially the generation I played, were very self-driven, and I think had a huge appetite for it. And I think the guys nowadays have, but I think what I think makes it more difficult maybe for this current group is the fact that Schmidt has been such an excellent coach and actually has giving them so much information in terms of, you do this, you'll get that. You do this, you'll get that. So perhaps their decision making, I would say, would be less than it would be for playing with any other team, because the coach has such an eye for detail and is such, I would think, and I can't, I suppose, comment with exact 100% accuracy on this because I never played under him, but being around the camp and listening to players, you can see that essentially they're so well prepped that it has gone well for them the majority of the time, but when it doesn't go well, as you can see at the weekend, I think their capacity to problem solve on the run wouldn't be anywhere near, I suppose, other teams.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Like the term tactical straitjacket has been used over the past couple of days. Like the idea that perhaps Joe Schmidt is a little bit over prescriptive. Can he come back from that? Like how do you reverse that trend?
I think that's maybe with the benefit of hindsight on. I think the fact statistically Ireland were the best rocking team in the world over a long period of time, and that was a major, I suppose, pillar on how the Irish team based their performance. So you can't be wishy-washy about your philosophy, how you want to play the game. Joe Schmidt's team is the best rocking team in the world, so they put a massive focus on, I suppose, the ball carrier and the two nearest support players cleaning out that ruck, while other teams would be a little bit probably more wishy-washy in the fact that they attempt offloads, they put people past the ball, probably a little bit more high risk, or depending on how you want to analyse it, but less prescriptive is another way of looking at it in that regard. But I suppose what Ireland has happened to them in the past few games is that a normal penalty count could be 4. That's a triple, so that's a 300% disimprovement on where they normally are, which has massive impact for their game, because they're usually extremely miserly in the amount of, I suppose, easy possessions they give to opposition teams.
Yeah, like that would suggest to me then that if these Irish players aren't capable of carrying out the game plan to a very, very high level, the results can actually be fairly disastrous. That perhaps if you look at all the statistics, they're not actually getting hammered around the park, but ultimately there's a hammering on the scoreboard. Like, why is that, do you think? Do you think it is because, let's say, another game plan would perhaps yield better results with a lack of perfection, or what it is? What is it? Because it's certainly hard for me to put my finger on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think obviously in 2018, this was the team that with the way they were playing and with the way things had gone for Leinster and Ireland, it was looked at the real threat to New Zealand for winning a World Cup. Okay, now we're probably gone away from that, and I think the reality is we're probably somewhere in between. I most definitely think that there is a massive emphasis on the ruck and on work rate and on, I think, producing the ball well for the 9 to get front foot ball. But what has happened in the English and Welsh games particularly has been that we have been, I suppose, better physically. We haven't won collisions. We haven't got any impetus on the front foot, which means that we can't get our phase game in play. At the weekend, there wasn't, I suppose, any special strike plays, which we come to associate with this Irish team. And in that regard, you'd probably be a little frustrated as a supporter looking at that. But also, I think the error rate was high too, and that comes down to individual errors. I think the way I look at it now as a coach, looking at it probably differently than when you look at it as a player. Was there structure right? Was it skill set errors, or was it mindset? I would say Wales were probably had a superior mindset in the fact that I think excellent restart, 4 metres from the touchline, driven into touch. Wales line out, moved to midfield. I think completely analysed what would happen. A beautiful chip, ball over. score. And there's absolutely no doubt that Ireland are a different team leading than they are coming from behind. I think their game plan is absolutely suited to be controlling the football and controlling the scoreboard. I think statistically, you look at Ireland, in all their big performances, have always scored first and have always led at half-time to go on and win. And I think Brian made a good point. I don't know if we hear it in that clip, but I listened to him on the fact that I think your tactics in the Aviva can be different in the fact that you can be braver and going for the corner, and that's not negative coming out of me with hindsight, but I think 7-0, 10-0 and a cup final away from home, you got to keep the scoreboard ticking. So you mean 10-3, 10-6. We didn't have a penalty attempt, but we could have, there was opportunities most definitely to kick for points. And I think away from home under 70,000 people against you, it's a different mentality and it's a different way of playing the game. And I think if Rory Best maybe had a one thing from a captaincy point of view, I think potentially he may do what Paul O'Connell did to me and just point at the post and don't even ask your kicker.
Yeah. Like that's one of the big questions as well. Like you mentioned it there about the idea of Ireland starting poorly. I think it was something like 25 tests up until the Six Nations, or perhaps just in the Six Nations, that a Joe Schmidt side hadn't conceded a try in the first 5 minutes, and then it happens twice in this championship. It happens against England, it happens against Wales, and as we've seen, we're not great at chasing a game. Like, how do you shift that from a coach's perspective, Ronan, to actually being good at chasing a game? Is it something that Ireland can possibly achieve in 6 months, especially when there's no competitive games between now and the World Cup?
I think there is, yeah. I think mentally you have to address it as a group and probably get a bit of a brainstorming session with your players. Potentially you do it with your leaders first. I think that would be a wise thing, because it's a very valid question you ask, because it's a complete different mindset in terms of, what if England score in the first minute? What if Wales score? How are we going to deal with that? And it was very obvious that the Irish leaders at the weekend didn't deal well with that, and it actually became more of an issue in the fact that the body language wasn't good among certain players, and the temperament wasn't good among certain players, and that's something that has to be addressed, because it's only the pressure is only going to be ramped up now if you're looking at winning the World Cup or performing to probably a standard that these guys have deemed acceptable for them. So I think with all these, not with all these, but as you said, the one I think great learning they can get out of the weekend is the question you asked there: how do you chase a game with the tactics they have, and the fact that I think their game is set up for controlling the ball and scoring and dictating tempo. But if that happens, have the capacity to stray from focusing completely on playing a ruck game to potentially playing an offload game.
Mm-hmm. And like you've got to look at the leaders on the pitch. Like we've spoken about Sexton there, like with Rory Best as captain and with the leadership core, there's more that they can be doing, Ronan, isn't there, in terms of perhaps arresting that decline within a game?
Yeah, no, I would say this one was, and I've been there as a number 10 in this situation before. A lot of these guys haven't, though, and you have to remember that as well. They haven't, under Joe Schmidt reign, I don't think they've had a performance or a feeling like this, while from our era we would have been in this position against the All Blacks once, where we got thumped from the first minute and we couldn't stop the slide. And it's very hard at this stage to, at any level, especially this level, to arrest the slide when you give momentum to a team that have the bit between their teeth. And I'm not answering your question, but I think it is something that has to be really addressed, because it will happen again. Maybe not to the extent, but you look at it in terms of the England game was probably very different in terms of as good as England were in the day, the game was still alive after 65 minutes. In this game, when Ireland went 10-0 down and they didn't kick at goal, it was a 2-score game that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the 25-7 is quite flattering in the fact that it could easily have been 32-0.
Yeah.
And that probably was probably a reflection on the one-sidedness of the game, but these players over a 4 or 5 year period haven't had their foot in their throat like that ever. So it's probably good that the Six Nations is over now, that they can get away from it. And as I spoke to you a few weeks ago, I think there was always going to be a few stages before the World Cup in terms of the Six Nations. Then there's the European Cup campaign. Then there's the the World Cup warm-up games, the 4-game period there, which now is absolutely crucial in the fact that form has to be found there, because the form isn't there, and that's their period, I would say, to put the demons to bed. And then, because if they're still rumbling under the surface, you can be sure once it becomes a one-score game in the World Cup, they can come back to haunt you very quickly, which I know all too well about from 2007.
Yeah.
How do you think Ronan Sexton will respond psychologically, just from being Player of the Year at one moment, and then the next minute his position is almost, people will start saying, well, how long is Johnny Sexton going to be our starting out half? And just psychologically, can he get over that bridge? Because he must wake up, this morning now in a pretty dark place in some respects, wondering where is this going to go for him?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question to ask. But I think where he goes from here, I think is he can decide. But also, I think depending on how how he reacted after winning the World Player of the Year. I think Johnny would be first to realise he was number 10 in a team that remained unbeaten for the year, in the fact that his individual game was very good. I would have also probably factored in the fact that Conor Murray could have easily received that award, in the fact that I thought at the time it was easier for people to say that Conor Murray was better than Aaron Schmidt as opposed to Johnny Sexton over Boden Barrett. I think you can have that argument can go either way on an individual basis. Boden Barrett is an absolute incredible rugby player. Maybe the All Blacks in 2018 weren't the force that they have been, but I think Conor Murray also, depending on how you look at it, and I probably have a little bit of a Munster bias in the fact that he had an exceptional 2017 and 18, and he could have won that. So getting back to your question, I think if Johnny was smart, which he is a really smart guy, he would have acknowledged that I think I'm in this position because of my teammates and because of what Irish rugby has done and because of how well I have played and because I'm such a good competitor. But central to that has probably been how much of a competitor I am. I think now he has seen that when things aren't going well around him, he has to maintain his high standards, and he's let himself down in that regard, I would say, in the fact that his own individual performances haven't been where he'd like them to be. And I'd say, knowing how honest he is, he'd be the first to acknowledge that. But it's an 8-week period and great players respond. But now you have to see what the reply is. I think he will reply, most definitely. I think the short-term response will be huge out of him. I genuinely believe that. I think when it means so much to a guy, you have different ways of showing it. And, I think sometimes he misinterpreted Johnny would be in the fact that he has a sour head in him, and I had that head in me too, but I think it means so much to him to win. And I asked him about pushing and shoving Joey Carberry in down in Thomond Park. I said, Johnny, that doesn't look good. And he said, I caught him unawares. I didn't realise that he wasn't kind of actors on, and he fell a bit. So in that regard, I think he sometimes underappreciates how much of a leader he is to other people, because he gets so caught up in the moment of being a driven professional, and he needs to get better at that, I think, but he'd be the first to acknowledge that he's trying to get better at it, and I think he will get better at it. But I think what he needs to do now is probably just narrowing his focus on getting his performance right, and then as a result the team will get better, as opposed to maybe him looking at it in the fact that I need a team to get better for me to look good. If that makes sense to you
Yeah,
guys.
no, it does. It's very interesting stuff. Listen, Ronan, thanks a million for taking the call. We'll chat to you again soon.
Cheers, good luck lads.
Ronan O'Gara there, live on the line from New Zealand.